Hey everyone, Mark from Teacharium. Today we're going to be going over some of the types we have built into the platform. These are the common question types that you can use with your learner. So the first one we're going to show off is a simple multiple choice. Here I have a step and a prompt at the top. To make a multiple choice, I'm going to come over to my toolbar here on the right and find my question section and drag out a multiple choice question. By default, you get a few choices and each choice will have a text box inside it. I'm going to go ahead and edit these. The capital of France is Paris, so I'll make that my first option. We'll say Berlin and Madrid. All right, so now I have a multiple choice with three options. If I come over here to the right to the fields and pick the multiple choice, I'll see those three choices here. If I expand them, I can see that the first one is currently set as the correct answer, and the other two are not the correct answer. If we go ahead and play this lesson, we'll see our question, we'll see our options. I can pick from one of these, and nothing else really happens. I can just hit next and go on to the next question. In fact, if I had been on here and I hadn't answered at all, I could still go on to the next question. So let's talk a little bit about that. Here I am back in my step, and the first thing I want to do is make it so that the learner has to answer the question. We have some special components that control the flow of the lesson. Those are under the logic section here. I'm going to use a logic gateway. What a gateway does is it gates the next button until some criteria are met. If I go over here to the fields, I can see my criteria is either all attempted, all correct, or I could create a custom condition. I'm going to leave it on all attempted. So now if I play the lesson, I'll get the same question, but now the next button has been disabled for me because of that gateway. If I attempt the question, it'll now be enabled. I didn't get any feedback there as to whether it was correct or not. Another option that a multiple choice question can have is to show a check answer button. For this one, the check answer button is enabled. I didn't put a gateway in this, so I could push next and keep going, but I could also add a gateway so that it doesn't happen. So from here, I could go ahead and pick an incorrect answer. Now it's asking me what the capital of Germany is, so I'm going to say Hamburg, the answer. And obviously that's incorrect. It tells me that. I can click try again and try a different answer until I eventually stumble upon the correct one. If I was using something like this, maybe I'd put a gateway on there and say all the questions have to be correct before you can proceed. We haven't shown it, but you can have multiple items within the same queue or state. Using a simple gateway like that is all good and well. But oftentimes we want more complex flows through the question. We have two other logic components, a practice and a quiz controller, and they enable us to get a more interactive experience. If I select this logic practice controller, I can see that there's a number of tries, hints, correct feedback, and answer feedback. A controller lets me try up to 3 times. If I don't get it within those 3 times, it's going to give me the show answer feedback and highlight the correct answer. If I do get it correct, it's going to show me the correct answer feedback. There's also a hint button, and we'll take a look at that in just a sec. Here we are on that practice step. You notice the next button is disabled. I have a new check answer button, and I have a new hint button. If I click the hint, I'll get a hint right away, and I can dismiss that. If I make an incorrect answer, such as selecting Venus, and then click the check answer button, I'll get a hint saying, hey, that's probably not it. Maybe you should look at this hint. If I make another incorrect answer, it'll show me another hint. And since I had my number of attempts set to 3, if I make a third incorrect answer, it's going to tell me the correct answer, give me some feedback, and allow me to progress to the next question. Now, if I had gotten it correct immediately, I would have gotten the correct answer message and been able to progress on. As I mentioned, the other logic controller that we have built in is the quiz controller. The quiz controller allows the learner to have a single attempt on the question. If they get it correct, they'll get the correct feedback. If they get it incorrect, they'll get the incorrect feedback. Let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So here I am on the quiz step. If I get it incorrect, click next. I'll get a message telling me it's not correct, and then after a few seconds, it'll progress on to the next step. Similarly, if I'd gotten it correct, I would have gotten the correct message, and then it would have progressed on to the next step. Now these different controller types, the practice, the quiz, the gateway, they'll work with any of the item types that we're about to look at, so just keep that in mind. We're not going to go through the full exercise for each item type. The matching item type gives a familiar matching interface to allow the learner to match different things. When I first drag it in, I can see that I have a distractor pool at the top, and then I have a couple of questions with their answers. When you're authoring it, you're going to author the question and the answer together, and any extra options up in the distractor pool. If I select this, I can go to its options and add additional questions or distractors. I'm actually going to delete one of these distractors, so there's only one extra, and I'm going to add a new question. I can see that when you add a question, it'll automatically get a text box in both the question and the answer section that you can edit. But you don't have to use text. I can get rid of that default text component and drag in any of my other types of components. For instance, if I wanted to match images instead of words, I could drag in an image component and select an image. I'm going to make that a bit smaller so it fits better. When we play the lesson, the learner will see all the options in the pool at the top. They can drag these options down into the answer slots. They can also drag the image down. And finally, drag the last answer. As you notice, we had more options than we had questions, and that was the distractor pool we talked about at the beginning. From there, I can check the answers and move on to my next question. The ordering question type asks the learner to take a list of items and put in the correct order. If I select the fields of the ordering question, I can see that the items are here. I can click the plus button to add a new one. I can click the little trash can to delete an option, and then I can edit the text within each of these. Just like the other question types, it doesn't have to be text. It could be images or even crazy things like a movie or another question type if you really wanted to, but don't do that. It would just be confusing. When you're authoring an order question, author them in the correct order. They'll be automatically shuffled when presented to the learner. The matrix choice question type allows me to set up a grid of questions and potential answers. Here, there's 2 questions that are true, false. If I come over here to the right, I can add more columns or rows. You can imagine creating some sort of rating or Likert scale. When you add rows, to specify the correct answer, add a correct column ID. That comes from your columns up here, and you can set each column to have a unique ID. Like all of our other question types, you can put any kind of content within the question or the option columns, such as images or even interactive components. The matrix choice question has a special survey mode. When survey mode is enabled, there are no correct or incorrect answers. Our last item type we're going to look at today is the this or that component. This item type displays several buttons and asks the user to select one of them. They can be displayed in a column like this or in a row across the screen. You add new options by clicking the little plus sign underneath options. This or that has some special logic for incrementing variables so that you can build up a profile over the course of a lesson. If you're interested in that, our Learning Inventory Guide has a video dedicated to building an entire lesson like that. Take a look. One obvious question type that we didn't show today is a text or numeric input where the learner is asked to type something in. You make questions like that through the text component, and we're going to have an entire guide that teaches you how to do that. So watch for that. This video has given you a solid introduction to the built-in types of items available to an author in Teacharium. Besides these simple question types, it's possible to compose other components into rich interactive experiences, and we'll explore that in a future guide. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video.